The sun burned gently over the quiet village of Mudiki. In a clay hut at the far end lived Mama Efe, an old widow known for her kindness but forgotten by many. Her garden had dried up and her firewood stack had grown thin. That morning, she boiled the last handful of millet she had, barely enough to fill one wooden bowl. She didn't cook for luxury anymore, only to survive. But she still whispered gratitude to the spirits of her ancestors, thanking them for even that small portion. As she stepped out with the bowl to sit under the mango tree, the village dogs barked at a figure stumbling down the dirt path, barefoot, dusty, and unknown. He didn't say a word. He looked like hunger had dragged him across 10 villages. And though Mama Efe had only one bowl of food, her heart made a quiet decision before her hands could stop it. Mama Efe motioned to the ground beside her, placing the warm bowl in front of the stranger. She watched him eat with trembling hands, each bite swallowed as if it hurt. Her own stomach twisted in hunger, but she said nothing. The villagers passed, shaking their heads at her foolishness. They whispered, "She's giving away her last food. For what?" But Mama Efe believed in the sacredness of hospitality. In the days of her ancestors, they said, if the gods test you, they will not wear crowns. The man finished the food, nodded once, and lay down on the cool ground under the tree. That afternoon, the skies turned strange, clouds thick and low like smoke. A strong wind swept through the village, lifting clothes from lines and rattling roof thatch. Mama Efe looked up, her old heart steady. She didn't know that something bigger than wind was moving toward her. As night crept over the village, the stranger remained still, breathing but not speaking. Mama Efe kept watch from her doorway, the cold beginning to bite through her wrapper. Her stomach growled again, but there was nothing to cook, nothing to grind, and no neighbors would lend her grain. Still, she lit a small fire with dry twigs, sending tiny sparks into the dark like little stars. Suddenly, deep into the night, a low rumble echoed across the valley. It wasn't thunder, it was steady and heavy, unlike anything the villagers had heard before. Children cried and chickens scattered. Mama Efe's eyes widened. She stood slowly, leaning on her cane. Then came the blinking red lights from the sky, 3 of them, descending like silent spirits. The rumble grew louder. The villagers screamed and ran. But Mama Efe stood rooted in place, eyes fixed on the heavens. Helicopters were descending right above her hut. The first helicopter touched the village ground like a hawk descending upon its prey. Dust exploded into the air. Palm fronds shook. Goats scattered. And Mama Efe didn't move. Her wrapper flapped in the wind like a warrior's flag. Armed men stepped out, not with weapons drawn, but with medical bags and glowing tablets. They weren't soldiers, they were officials. One walked straight to the tree where the stranger still lay, lifted a device to his face, and spoke into a radio. The others scanned the village as if looking for something buried. The villagers peeked from behind fences, confused and frightened. Mama Efe blinked as another chopper landed behind her compound. Her roof trembled, but she didn't fear. She was not a woman used to comfort, but she was a woman used to signs. She knew this was no accident, and somehow it had something to do with the man she fed. One of the officials approached Mama Efe. He asked questions. Where was the man? How long had he been there? She pointed gently to the tree. The stranger was now sitting upright, calm, as if he had been expecting them. They carried him away carefully, respectfully, like a man who carried more than flesh, like a man whose blood had secrets. Then they returned, but not to take. This time they brought crates, crates of food, crates of medicine, clean water in bottles, and blankets in vacuum-sealed packs. The entire village watched in silence. Mama Efe's tiny compound had become the center of something sacred. People approached slowly, unsure if they were dreaming or cursed. A child touched one of the bottles, and when nothing exploded, they rushed forward. What was this? Who was the man? Why did helicopters fall from the sky over a bowl of millet? The village chief was among those who arrived last. After the people had already begun whispering that Mama Efe had been visited by angels, he demanded answers, but none were given. The men in uniforms only said, "We found him, thanks to her." Mama Efe sat on a wooden stool as the children brought her food from the crates. For the first time in days, she ate and wept, not from hunger anymore, but from knowing her ancestors had not forgotten her. That night, when the helicopters flew off again, their lights disappeared into the stars and silence returned to the earth. But the story had only begun, because the next morning, black jeeps entered the village from the forest road, and one man stepped out. He was tall, clean-shaven, and surrounded by bodyguards. He walked straight to Mama Efe's door with a heavy heart and a face the entire country would soon recognize. The man who stepped from the black jeep wasn't wearing a crown, but everyone could tell. He wasn't ordinary. His shoes didn't carry dust. His clothes smelled of cities, and his presence hushed even the restless goats. Mama Efe remained seated on her stool, watching him like she had seen such men before, in dreams. He knelt, surprising everyone. The villagers gasped. He took her hands gently and said something no one heard. Then he gestured, and from the jeep came bags, stacked in pairs, each heavier than the next. One was opened, revealing rows of crisp currency, more than the entire village had seen in years. The man stood up and declared, "She saved someone precious to me." He looked toward the tree where the stranger had been. "That man is my brother." The villagers froze. Some whispered, some dropped their knees to the ground, and Mama Efe could only blink. The wealthy visitor turned to the villagers and asked if they had helped the stranger too. No one answered. They had all passed him by. It was Mama Efe, the poorest of them all, who gave her last meal to a man they believed wasn't worth their help. And now that man had turned their dusty village into a holy place. The billionaire ordered that a borehole be dug immediately. He brought in engineers and solar panels, new roofing materials, seeds for farming, even books for a school that didn't yet exist, all in one afternoon. Mama Efe was gifted a new house right beside her hut, built in hours using prefabricated materials flown in from the city. She was asked if she wanted to live in a mansion in Abuja. But she smiled faintly and said no. Her roots were here. Her soul was buried in this soil. By evening, the village had changed forever. Children now played with new toys. Women stood beside silver cooking pots and bottled gas stoves. Even the chief stayed silent, no longer the most important man that day. They had learned something deep, that kindness wasn't about what you had, but what you gave. Mama Efe sat in a chair under the mango tree, watching the sunset paint the sky in gold. Beside her, the same stranger from before now sat in clean clothes, no longer looking lost. He reached out and held her hand gently, as if she were more than a woman. And maybe she was. Maybe, to the gods, Mama Efe had just passed a test written long ago. A test disguised in dust and hunger. The helicopters had flown away, but something greater had landed. A new beginning. The days that followed were nothing like the past. Mama Efe, once forgotten and frail, now woke each morning to the sound of builders hammering progress into the earth. Her compound swelled with people, engineers, architects, and visitors from the city who came just to see the woman who fed a stranger and brought blessings upon a village. News reporters arrived with cameras. They asked questions, but Mama Efe said very little. She was not one for too many words. She simply pointed to the mango tree and smiled. That's where it began, she said, and the world took note. Her story appeared on radios and newspapers across the nation. But even with fame, she did not change her ways. She still swept her compound with a straw broom, still lit her fire the old way, and still sat with the same calm spirit under the mango tree. The billionaire kept his promise. He named the new clinic Efe Wellness Center and assigned a team of doctors there permanently. A school rose beside it, painted in soft earth colors and surrounded by young trees. Every child in the village now had books, uniforms, and solar lanterns. The stranger, whose real name was revealed to be Prince Dabo, heir to a powerful dynasty, chose to remain in the village for a while. He said it reminded him of his late mother. He followed Mama Efe every morning, learning the quiet grace in her steps, the rhythm in her hands. And each time someone asked her why she gave her last food to him, she said something simple. If the gods asked what you did with your day, what will you answer? The villagers began to reflect deeply. Some wept, some prayed, others planted new crops in her name. One night, the village gathered for a feast. Fires burned in long lines, smoke dancing into the stars, drums echoed through the hills, and people wore their best wrappers and beads. At the center of it all sat Mama Efe, her face glowing in firelight, her name on every tongue. Prince Dabo stood and raised a calabash, thanking her before everyone. He called her a mother of nations, a woman who fed a king without knowing. As the cheers filled the air, the village chief stepped forward and handed Mama Efe a carved staff, declaring her the mother matron of Umudike. The crowd roared, children danced, but Mama Efe only smiled gently and looked up to the heavens. Somewhere above, the ancestors must have been smiling too, proud of the woman who passed their hidden tests with nothing but a bowl of millet and an open heart. Weeks passed, but the glow of what had happened did not fade. People from distant towns now traveled to Umudike just to see the place where the woman who changed everything lived. Some came to pray under the mango tree. Others came with baskets of gifts, hoping that even a piece of her kindness would touch their lives. Meanwhile, Mama Efe never changed her routine. She rose with the sun, spoke softly to her ancestors, and helped the new cooks prepare morning meals for orphans who now gathered near her hut each day. Prince Dabo built a community hall and called it Efe House of Mercy. It was meant for the poor, the tired, and the travelers, just like he had once been. And Mama Efe, now surrounded by comfort, never once acted like she owned any of it. To her, it all still belonged to the gods. The government got involved next. A convoy arrived one bright morning, filled with state officials and camera crews. They brought framed awards, medallions, and speeches. But when the crowd quieted for Mama Efe to respond, she stepped forward slowly and said only this.
Goodness does not shout, it is seen. The entire place went silent. Even the officials stood still, moved by the weight of her words. Later that evening, when they left, they gave her a letter. The president himself had written to her. She had been invited to Abuja to be honored nationally. But Mama Efe declined. I am honored already, she said to those nearby. When your name is carried by the wind and your story feeds strangers, you have already been crowned. The prince respected her wish, though the media couldn't understand it. She didn't need more. She had peace, and that was enough. But the story did not end in peace alone. One night, a young woman knocked at Mama Efe's compound gate. Her clothes were torn, her eyes red from weeping. She had walked from a village far beyond the hills. She said she was lost, hungry, afraid. Mama Efe looked at her carefully. The mango tree rustled above. Without hesitation, she brought out a warm bowl of yam porridge she had saved for herself. She gave it to the girl. No questions, no conditions. The girl ate, weeping quietly. Later that night, as the moon rose, Prince Dapo came outside and saw them sitting together. One woman, old and wise, and another, broken and beginning. He smiled. The cycle had continued. A simple act repeating like the beat of a drum. And once again, in a corner of a quiet African village, a test was passed, one no one else could see. But the spirits knew.
At sunrise, the young woman was still there, sweeping the compound before Mama Efe even stirred from sleep.
She had stayed through the night, warmed by the fire, and now moved as if the place was already her home. Mama Efe stepped outside and watched in silence. She remembered how it all began, with one bowl of food and one stranger. The rhythm was repeating itself. She saw how the girl's shoulders relaxed, how the fear had begun to leave her face. When Prince Dapo came by later with fresh fruits from the market, he saw something in the girl's eyes too. Recognition, maybe. Redemption. Mama Efe invited her to stay longer. No one is lost here, she said. And like that, the girl became a part of the household. She helped in the clinic, learned how to farm, and laughed again for the first time in many moons. Weeks turned to months, and the seasons shifted. Mama Efe's village was now unrecognizable from the days of cracked walls and empty pots. The trees bore fruit, the streams ran clean, and children no longer cried from hunger. Yet amid all this change, Mama Efe remained the same, graceful in her humility. Visitors still came in trickles and floods, each one welcomed, each one fed. One day, a large black SUV pulled up without warning. Men in suits stepped out, but they weren't here to offer. They came to ask. A foreign foundation wanted to create a documentary about Mama Efe's life. They offered millions, fame, global recognition. But she listened, nodded, and then simply said, "Tell them to make a film about giving, not about me." The men looked puzzled, but Dapo smiled. He had learned by now. Her answers were never for applause. They were for those who could hear. That night, thunder rumbled softly beyond the mountains, and the mango tree shook its leaves as if in prayer. Mama Efe sat beside the young girl, now dressed in new clothes, her hair freshly braided. They watched the sky together. "Do you know why the gods choose the poor to carry the biggest stories?" Mama Efe asked. The girl didn't answer, but her eyes were full. The fire crackled near their feet, and the wind danced through the branches above. From a distance, Prince Dapo approached quietly and placed a wrapped parcel beside the girl. Inside were documents, land deeds, business papers, and an envelope. "Mama Efe asked me to give you this when you are ready," he said. The girl opened it slowly. It was more than she ever dreamed, and yet she cried not for the money or land. She cried because someone had seen her, not as broken, but whole. Morning came with soft mist, wrapping the village like a blessing. The girl, now called Ada by Mama Efe, walked the paths once carved by goats and barefoot children, greeting neighbors with gentle smiles. She had changed, but so had the village. That day, Prince Dapo announced that a women's training center would be built in Ada's name, funded entirely through a foundation started quietly in Mama Efe's honor. It would teach tailoring, farming, medicine, and reading, skills that lifted people from surviving to living. As workers laid the first stones, Mama Efe stood far off beneath the mango tree, watching silently. She was not interested in having her name on walls. She wanted it in hearts, and that she already had. Ada ran back to her, hugged her tightly, and whispered, "Thank you for that one bowl of food." Mama Efe patted her head. "It was never mine," she whispered back, "but joy often brings its shadows." That evening, a strange illness spread across the nearby villages. People fell weak, fevers rising, panic traveled faster than the sickness. Some said it was a curse, others blamed poisoned water. The government moved slowly, but Prince Dapo did not. He called for emergency teams, medicine, doctors, nurses. They moved fast, but it was Mama Efe who walked into the heart of the sick village with nothing but herbal remedies and old wisdom passed down by her grandmother. She rubbed leaves, boiled roots, and prayed under her breath. By the third day, fevers broke. People sat up. Children smiled again. The doctors were stunned, but Mama Efe only nodded. "The earth still remembers how to heal," she said. The people of the sick village gathered to gift her a white dove and a carved stool, saying, "You came to us like the rain, quiet and saving." Back home, as dusk set in, Mama Efe finally sat down. Her bones ached. Her hands were tired, but her soul was full. Prince Dapo, Ada, and the villagers gathered around her compound that night, holding candles and singing old songs of thanks. There were no cameras, no reporters, just people, grateful and bound by the light of one woman's decision to feed a stranger. As the fire crackled and the moon rose, Mama Efe lifted her eyes to the sky and said nothing. She didn't need to. The mango tree swayed gently behind her, as if it too was listening to the silence. Somewhere above, the ancestors watched and smiled, their stories alive again. And though the world outside changed with machines and glass towers, in one small corner of Africa, it was still kindness that ruled. And it all started with one quiet yes to give. It began as an ordinary morning. The sky painted soft orange, birds calling from the trees. But this morning was different. Word had spread far and wide. Dignitaries, traditional rulers, and ordinary villagers arrived in long lines, walking dusty roads just to catch a glimpse of Mama Efe's compound. She didn't ask for a ceremony, but one was happening anyway, not one with loud speeches or trumpets. It was a gathering of gratitude. Beneath the mango tree, they placed a carved throne, not of gold, but of polished Iroko wood. When Mama Efe was brought out gently by Ada and Prince Dapo, people stood in reverent silence. Then they began to sing, not songs of royalty, but songs of kindness, legacy, and mercy. Mama Efe didn't smile widely. She simply nodded as if she had already heard this song in her dreams. And maybe, in some way, she had. That afternoon, a letter arrived from the United Nations. It was delivered by a special envoy, who stepped down respectfully and handed it to Mama Efe. She looked at it, then passed it to Prince Dapo. She didn't read English, but he did. The letter declared her a global symbol of human compassion. International media requested interviews. Countries offered honorary degrees. Still, Mama Efe asked only for one thing: build libraries in forgotten villages. Let my story be told in books that reach the poor. Her voice was calm but firm. Everyone agreed. In her name, a new movement was born. Feeding centers, kindness networks, and education drives, all rooted in one truth. That power does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers through the hands of an old woman with nothing to give but a bowl of food. That night, as the village rested, Mama Efe sat quietly on her stool under the tree where it all began. Ada lay curled beside her. Prince Dapo leaned on the wooden fence, watching the stars. The night was peaceful, as if the earth itself had paused to breathe. And in that stillness, a soft breeze carried the scent of millet from a distant fire, reminding them all of where the story started. No noise, no fanfare, just one act of kindness, one bowl, one stranger, one choice. The moon drifted above, lighting the land in silver, and Mama Efe closed her eyes, not in weariness, but in knowing. Her story was now a seed, and that seed would bloom in hearts far beyond her own. The helicopters had long flown away, but the legacy, it stayed, rooted in the soil of Umudike, forever.